The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was still sitting in my car in the parking lot at work. Subject line, estate update, final distribution. My mother had been gone 6 weeks. I opened it. My brother had retained an estate attorney. The will had been amended. I was no longer listed as a beneficiary on the family property. I read it 3 times. This is an inheritance revenge story. But it didn't start as revenge. It started as sitting in a parking lot, reading the same 4 sentences over and over, trying to find the part where I'd misunderstood something. My mother had owned the house I grew up in, a rental property 2 streets over, and a brokerage account she'd built over 30 years. My brother and I were both named in her will. Equal shares. That was always the plan. I thought I knew what was coming. The first thing I did was call an estate attorney, not my brother's, one I found myself, and ask for a copy of the amended will. She sent it that afternoon. I scrolled to the signature page. The amendment had been signed 11 days before my mother died. She had been in hospice for 3 weeks by then. She hadn't been lucid for most of the last 2. I told myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe she'd had a clear day. Maybe she'd asked for this herself. I checked the date again. I wasn't reading it wrong. That evening, I pulled out a fireproof box my mother had given me years earlier. She was organized, always had been. Told me to hold on to it just in case. I sat on the kitchen floor and went through it piece by piece. Warranty deeds, insurance policies, her original will, and near the bottom, in a manila envelope labeled in her handwriting, Revocable Living Trust, executed 2019. I pulled it out slowly. My mother had set up a trust 4 years before she died. She'd mentioned it once, said she'd handled things, and I hadn't pushed. I trusted her. I started reading. The trust held the house, the rental property, the brokerage account, 2 named beneficiaries, me and my brother, equal shares. I kept reading. Near the back, a clause I almost missed. A small paragraph that looked routine until I understood what it meant. The trust was irrevocable upon the death of the grantor. Its terms could not be altered by any subsequent will, codicil, or amendment. I read it again. The amended will my brother had filed, the one removing my name, had no legal authority over assets already held inside the trust. He had changed a document that couldn't change anything. I photographed every page, sent copies to my email, saved backups to cloud storage. My hands weren't steady. I called the attorney the next morning and asked one question. If a will is amended after assets have already been transferred into a revocable living trust, does the amendment affect the trust? She paused. Then she said, generally speaking, no. Trust assets pass according to the trust document, not the will. I thanked her and hung up. My brother had hired an attorney, paid to have the will amended, sent me a formal email about final distribution. Done all of it, without ever looking inside that fireproof box. He forgot the trust existed. I retained an attorney the following week. I brought the trust document, the original will, the amended will, and a timeline showing the amendment date against my mother's hospice admission records. My attorney reviewed everything quietly. When she looked up, she said, "The will amendment is essentially decorative. The trust controls the estate. She filed the paperwork to confirm the trust's authority, the house, the rental property, the brokerage account, all of it. My brother called 4 days later. He talked about my mother's wishes, about how the family had agreed on a new arrangement. He had a lot to say. I let him finish. Then I told him I'd retained an attorney and that the estate documents had been filed. He went quiet. He said, "What documents?" I told him to have his attorney contact mine. That was the last thing I said. The process took several months. Letters exchanged between attorneys. Phone calls I mostly let go to voicemail. His attorney eventually confirmed what mine had said from the beginning. The trust governed the assets. The amended will had no standing over trust property. Distribution would proceed according to the original document. Equal shares, exactly as my mother had always intended. The rental property closed escrow in the fall. My half of the proceeds deposited into my account the same week. I stood in the kitchen that morning and looked at my phone for a long moment. I thought about my mother labeling that envelope in her careful handwriting, filing it at the bottom of a fireproof box, telling me to hold on to it just in case. She knew exactly what she was doing. She had signed that trust 4 years before she died, had the assets transferred in, had the document notarized and filed, and then she handed me a box and said, "Hold on to this." She didn't say why. She didn't need to. The trust document is still in that fireproof box, exactly where she left it. My name is on it. It always was. Most people never think to check what a will actually controls. And that's exactly what some people are counting on.